Chapter 4. The Book. Elias had worn a groove into the tiles. 6 steps forward, 6 back, turn, repeat. The slip crumpled and straightened in his fist, until the edges cut his palm. Each pass carried him beneath the humming strip lights, their glow sickly and pale against patchwork metal. Somewhere a fan wheezed, coughing every third rotation like an old man searching for breath. Every sound sharpened his pulse. The guards tracked him without moving their heads, eyes flicking each time he turned. Their armor wasn't polished, only functional, edges abraded, straps tired. One yawned behind a half-raised visor. The other shifted his grip on the baton, not out of boredom, but unease. "How long do you expect me to stand here?" Elias said. "You said it would arrive. You said today." Silence pressed back, heavier than the recycled air. He shoved the slip toward them, hand shaking. "While you stall, while you bury this in some drawer, my family." The older guard lifted his baton just enough for the charge to hiss. "Sit," he said, voice worn down to its edge, "or you'll wait in restraints." The younger one looked past Elias, at anything else. "Best not push it, sir. Just wait." Elias dropped onto the bench, leg bouncing, the slip creasing under his thumb. Above the atrium, a wall of screens braided 20 channels into one river, trade figures, shuttle queues, a council mouthpiece promising stability in a tone that suggested nothing could ever change again. The feed stuttered. The anchor's voice rose half a step. Red banners flashed across the bottom of the screen. Breaking report. Spear 9 alert. Possible hostile lock detected. The camera cut to orbital telemetry. A red lattice unspooled over the curve of the world. Lines netting oceans and continents, tightening sector by sector until the geometry burned bright over 3A. Elias stood without feeling his feet. His mouth had already formed the word before his mind had. Home. He crossed the distance to the guards in 3 steps. "I need it now." His throat was dry. The words scraped coming out. "Do you hear me? I need it now." "Not our call," the older guard said, baton braced across his chest. "If I have it, I can." Elias bit off the rest. He didn't have breath to waste on explanations no one wanted. The younger guard's eyes jumped between Elias and the lattice. "Sir, please, wait on the bench." A lean figure shouldered through the end of the hall, dodging a food cart, courier satchel tight against his ribs. Pale, late. He saw Elias and flinched like a dog that already knows the heel. He stopped just outside baton range. "Where is it?" Elias asked. The courier opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He fumbled the satchel's clasp, inside. Only a data pad and the sterile smell of cold paper. It was never cleared," he said. "I'm sorry. The council revoked it." Elias's hands were already moving. Collar, fist. The satchel swung and thumped the courier's hip. The receipt printer chirped a blank strip that fluttered down like a joke. "You're lying," Elias said, voice cracking off the beams, too large for the space. "You're lying because someone told you to. We had a..." Boots hammered from both sides of the hall. The older guard came in at an angle, baton raised. The younger set his feet and lifted his off the chain. "Hands," the older said. "Now."
He stepped in closer, jaw tight beneath the visor.
"I've had enough of this. If you can't keep calm."
"We'll make you calm."
Elias let go. The courier staggered backward, clutching the satchel to his chest, as if paper could shield him from anything that mattered. It didn't matter. The room had already chosen its shape. The older guard turned Elias to the wall with a practiced push. Firm, not cruel, as inevitable as gravity. Cold panel under his palms. A faint smear of citrus cleanser in the air. The baton's field hummed a blue whisper beside his ribs.
"Listen to me. This is important," Elias said, forcing the words around the weight in his chest.
"You see that?"
He jerked his chin at the screens.
"That's my home. It's targeted. You know what that means. With the codex, I could have done something.
Above our level, the older guard said. Everything's above your level until it lands on your head. The screens flared. Spear 9 online, earned across the arc of the world. The lattice that had pulsed uncertain now held steady, fixed geometry over Sector 3A. Someone in the hall said no in a small voice. Machinery somewhere changed pitch. A generator ticked in with a hollow cough. A child cried, fast and staccato, until a parent's hand muffled the sound. The intercom clicked, relays clearing their throats. The council spoke in a voice glazed to perfection. Remain calm. No strike is imminent. Return to your stations. The lie fell like a sheet of ice over a fire. People breathed again because they were told to. A few laughed, brittle as cracked glass. Others didn't move at all, as if stillness could make them invisible to the sky. Hands behind, the older guard said. We're moving. The cuffs were cool and efficient. The teeth bit down. The younger guard murmured, sorry, the way you do when you bump someone on a crowded tram. They pulled him from the wall and set him moving. The courier hovered, useless, then shrank away as they passed, satchel bumping his thigh. The screens washed the atrium in red. As a little procession crossed the hall, the room found its voice and aimed it, not at Elias, but at the armored backs. What are you doing? Someone snapped, loud with borrowed courage. He shouted at a screen, another said. Since when is that a crime? Always the same, an old man muttered, spitting on the floor. Drag folk off because you can. A woman dragged her child closer, glaring. Leave him, he didn't hurt anyone. The guards tightened their formation, heads low. As if the stairs were another weapon they had to shoulder through. The younger one's jaw worked. The older kept his eyes on the doors, like they were a finish line. Elias glanced up. On a maintenance ledge, a worker had frozen, mid-task, glove hanging from his fingers. A vendor shut his cart with shaking hands. Half the hall pretended not to watch and failed. Keep moving, the older guard said. At the threshold, the doors yawned open on a corridor that smelled of disinfectant and paper. Elias lifted his head, one last time. The world hung there, indifferent and precise. The red geometry obedient where the machine had told it to burn. Locked over the grid where his wife and daughter lived.
Behind him, anger frayed into hush. Ahead, processing waited. Polite, efficient, indifferent. He stepped through. Cowards, Elias managed.
Chapter 5. Silence breaks. The glass rattled in its frame. Not from trains or wind, but from something that lived far above the sky. Something aimed at Earth itself. In Sector 3A, one of the crowded residential blocks beneath the orbital grid of Spear 9, Elias's wife stood in the narrow kitchen, one hand pressed to the sill, the other holding her daughter close. Outside, the towers leaned into the glow. Neighbors filled their windows, faces pale, all staring up at the red geometry painted across the clouds. Her daughter's breath fogged the pain. Mama, what is it? She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A drill, that's all, the system testing itself. But the broadcast on the wall betrayed her. The anchor's voice shook, words stumbling over one another as banners scrolled wild across the bottom. Breaking report, Spear 9 lock confirmed, source unverified. The camera showed orbital telemetry, a lattice of red light tightening, sector by sector, until it froze over 3A. The girl turned, eyes wide. It's pointing here, her throat locked. She smoothed her daughter's hair, buying seconds. That just means the sensors are working. It doesn't mean. A low hum deepened through the building, vibrating the dishes in their cupboard. Lights dimmed, then flared too bright. From the street below came the sound of shutters grinding down, metal against metal, as families sealed themselves inside. On the broadcast, the council voice replaced the stammering anchor, smooth and polished as glass. Remain calm. No strike is imminent. Return to your stations. Her knees shook. She almost laughed because the lie was perfect, calm, practiced, even gentle, and yet the windows kept trembling in their frames. Her daughter clutched her tighter. Mama, Daddy said he'd keep us safe. He will, she whispered, though the words felt paper thin. Outside, a boy ran through the street, waving his arms, voice breaking as he shouted words she couldn't make out. An older man dragged him into a doorway, the shouting cut off. The hum sharpened again. The whole sector seemed to hold its breath. She pulled her daughter back from the window, away from the red glow crawling across the sky, and still the lattice stayed fixed. A target burned into the clouds above their home. Chapter 5.5 The Hold. The room smelled of metal and disinfectant. Jonas sat with his wrists bound, the sting of the cuffs still fresh on his skin. The guards had dumped him here after the interrogation, a box with no windows and a single strip light that buzzed like a dying insect. The door clanged open. Another prisoner stumbled inside. Elias. His coat was torn at the shoulder, face flushed with anger. A guard shoved him hard enough that he fell to one knee. Sit tight, the guard barked, baton raised. Processing will take you both soon. The door slammed shut. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the strip light filled the silence. Jonas studied him, the man from the atrium, the one who had shouted about something the council denied even existed. His eyes were still raw, his hands trembling. But beneath the surface, Jonas saw steel. You, Elias muttered, catching his stare. Another suspect? Another mistake, Jonas said flatly. The silence stretched. Elias sank onto the bench opposite, rubbing his wrists where the shackles had cut. He let out a hollow laugh. Mistakes don't get you locked in here. Threats do. Before Jonas could answer, the intercom crackled overhead. Lockdown in effect. All non-essential transfers suspended. Boots thundered down the corridor outside. Voices shouted in clipped cadence. Jonas leaned forward, tension threading his spine. They're sweeping. A new sound joined the boots, a metallic whine, higher pitched. Elias stiffened. Drone. Jonas rose as the door latch clicked. Not fully opening, just testing, mechanical. A narrow red beam lanced through the seam, crawling across the floor. Elias's breath caught. Scan.
The beam slid toward Jonas's feet. He moved before thinking, stamping down on the cuffs until the thin latch cracked. Pain flared through his wrists as the lock gave. He ripped the chain free and metal clattered on the deck. The drone's alarm began to climb, a raw electronic keening, but the corridor lights hiccuped, one long, stuttering blink, then dipped. A soft, distant thunk told him the station's actuators were catching up. The grid was lagging. Now! Jonas hissed. They hit the door together. Elias shoved his shoulder into the bulkhead while Jonas jammed the broken chain into the seam and levered. Sparks spat where metal scraped metal. The release motor coughed and grazed before the panel grudgingly slid open half a meter. The chain burned against his palm, the smell of scorched skin rising, but he didn't let go. He ducked through first, Elias on his heels. The drone spasmed, its lens flaring white-hot. Jonas swung the chain, smashing it across the sensor. Glass fractured, a shower of sparks, and the machine collapsed, legs twitching like a severed spider. For a breath, there was only the sharp taste of ozone. Then the station's warning tones rolled out in 3 separate nodes. Farther down the corridor, doors began to thud as pressure seals cycled. Boots were already turning toward them.
Shouts rose. This way, Jonas barked, dragging Elias down the service passage. They ran through pipes dripping condensation, the air tasting of rust and ozone. Behind them, the guards' voices echoed, orders sharp and certain. Elias stumbled once, caught himself, kept going. Jonas didn't look back. At the junction, Jonas pulled him into a side room, narrow, half forgotten, stacked with crates. He slammed the latch shut, just as shadows swept past in the corridor. Both men stood gasping in the dark. Elias pressed his palms to his knees, then looked up at Jonas. Why help me? Jonas's pulse hammered, but his voice came out steady. Because they were never after the truth. Only silence. The words hung between them, heavy, unfinished. Outside, the guards' voices faded, swallowed by the deeper howl of the lockdown sirens. Jonas and Elias stayed where they were, the strip light above flickering like a dying star. For the moment, they were alive, and for the first time, together.
They ran until the alarms thinned to a faint pulse. The lower corridors were narrow and cold, ribbed with steel and frost. Their footsteps echoed like dull strikes in a tunnel that never ended. "You think we lost them?" Jonas asked. "No," Elias said. "It may seem so, but I don't buy it." Jonas slowed, listening. The air was too still. No drones, no voices. Just the low hum of machines, breathing somewhere deep below. They slipped into a half-collapsed maintenance bay. Dust hung in the cone of a cracked light. Jonas leaned against a crate, rubbing the raw band on his wrist. "You always this calm after almost dying?" "I worked in logistics," Elias said. "Panic never shipped well." Jonas gave a dry snort. "You don't talk like a clerk. And you don't move like a civilian." "Didn't start as one." "What then?" "Training corps. Security detail." "Under who?" "Does it matter?" Elias turned to check the doorway's power conduit. A weak spark jumped and died, and that was when he noticed the stitching on Jonas's torn collar, a spiral quill inside a broken circle, half burned but still visible. "That's the Order of Archivists insignia. Inner Division." "And?" "Didn't expect a prisoner to be an archivist. Only an apprentice." Elias stared at him for a moment, then shook his head. "Archivists. It's because of them I got arrested." Jonas frowned. "What do you mean?" "I was supposed to receive a book, a coded volume. It was promised to me by one of your master archivists." He gave a bitter laugh. "He never showed. Archivists don't make promises lightly." "Who told you that?" "Master Terran. He said he'd deliver it himself."
Jonas froze. His voice dropped. "Terran was my mentor. He was killed yesterday, trying to retrieve a codex."
For a moment, nothing moved. Dust swirled in the thin light, slow as breath. "Then he meant to keep his word," Elias said quietly. "He just didn't live long enough to do it." "No," Jonas replied. "He didn't." They stood in silence, two men realizing they were pieces of the same broken story. Then a sound rolled down the corridor, the metallic stamp of boots, steady and organized. Both froze. Elias killed the light with a flick of his wrist. Shadows swallowed them. Through the cracked doorway, they saw beams sweep the hall, guards moving in pairs, visors gleaming white in the dark. Jonas pressed his shoulder to the wall, counting the steps. 8. Pause. A radio click. One of the guards stopped near the bay entrance. A sliver of light knifed across the floor, close enough to touch Jonas's boot. Neither of them breathed. "Sector's clear," one guard said, voice muffled through the mask. A moment's hesitation, then the beams turned away. The footsteps receded, fading back into the hum. Elias exhaled slowly. That was close. Too close. They'll sweep again. Jonas adjusted the strap on his pack. They'll lock down the upper levels next. Then we go lower. To the archives? If Terran died trying to reach something, that's where it'll be. Jonas hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but we move quiet. The corridors down there remember voices. They slipped back into the passageway. The lights flickered once, then steadied, casting their shadows long ahead of them. They didn't speak again, just walked, side by side, through the breathing dark, toward the place where all erased things go. The corridor narrowed until it became a service throat of iron and frost. Jonas pried open a maintenance hatch and leaned into the dark beyond. Cold air poured out, dry, bitter, carrying the smell of dust and old coolant. This drops straight to the archive levels, he said. That's where he fell? That's where it ended. He tested the ladder welded to the shaft wall. The metal bit at his gloves. Every sound seemed to echo forever. Elias followed, lowering himself carefully into the vertical gloom. The light from above shrank until it was no bigger than a coin. Only their headlamps remained,
sweeping over numbered plates and long-dead conduit labels. "Tell me something about him, Taryn." He was precise, methodical, didn't believe in chance. Did he believe in accidents? No. They climbed for minutes in silence, boots ringing against metal. Somewhere deep below, a relay clicked once, faint, mechanical, as if the station itself marked their progress. The shaft opened into a vast hall carved from bedrock. Their lights touched row after row of shelving and access scaffolds reaching 3 stories high. The east stacks, silent, rimed with frost, the air thick with the smell of scorched insulation and rust. Jonas stepped out first, his breath fogged before him. He fell from here. He moved toward the central ladder, its upper rungs blackened, the 5th one cleanly severed halfway through. Jonas crouched, gloved fingers tracing the edge of the cut. The metal curled inward, deliberate, not torn. Someone filed this. It wasn't an accident. You're sure? He never missed a rung in his life. Elias knelt beside him, shining his light along the beam. The scoring caught and glittered. Then he didn't fall, he murmured. He was dropped.
They both turned as a low metallic vibration rolled through the floor. Jonas killed his lamp. In the dark, only a faint rhythm remained, bootsteps and the whisper of fabric. 2 figures crossed the far end of the hall, helmet lamps slicing the dark. Guard patrol. Jonas gestured low. Down. They pressed against the base of the shelving, breathing shallow. The guard's light swept past the broken ladder, paused, then moved on. Radio static crackled, voices indistinct. A few seconds later, the sound faded into the distance.
Elias exhaled softly. "Still think they're not looking for us?" "They're not looking," Jonas said. "They're checking what he left behind." He shone his light once more on the ladder's break. A tiny fragment of metal had lodged in the groove, the edge blackened but still sharp. He pocketed it. "We'll need proof," he said. "This is a start. And the rest? Below." Taryn was heading to the vaults. He wouldn't have risked this fall for anything less. They gathered their gear and moved toward the lower access door. Their lights swept across the frost-white floor, catching on the warning stencil painted there decades ago. E13. Authorized personnel only. Jonas hesitated at the threshold. "You sure about this?" "Not a little." Together they stepped through. The door closed behind them with a soft hydraulic sigh, leaving the hall silent again, save for the faint, rhythmic creak of the severed ladder settling in the cold.
The hunt and the hall. The hiss of the vault door had hardly died when a light flared at the far end of the stacks, too bright for a hand lamp, too steady for a head torch. Voices followed, clipped, practiced. Then the metallic chatter of radio clicks and the scrape of armored boots on frost. Elias flattened against a crate as the first beam swept the aisle. He could feel the heat of it on his cheek, like a blade turned flat. From the haze at the far end emerged Captain Varon, broad-shouldered in black composite armor, a scorched rank stripe marking his pauldron. His long rifle hung low, scanner scope glowing pale blue. Behind him moved Lieutenant Kesh, leaner, his shoulder lamp flickering with each step, hands tight around a compact SMG and shock baton. "Seal check on E13, Varon ordered, voice calm and metallic under the visor. "Sweep the stacks." "Copy, sir," Kesh answered. "Eyes down. Duh." No surprises. Their lamps sliced through the dark, white cones trembling against ribs of shelving. Jonas's pulse drummed against his ribs. The air stank of coolant and dust, hot and bitter. A boot scuffed the floor 2 shelves over. A beam skittered across the severed rung they'd photographed earlier. Jonas clenched the small shard of metal he'd taken from the ladder cut. It bit into his palm like a promise. Kesh crouched near the damage, tracing it with his light. "Maintenance log here. Sealing now," he muttered into his mic. "Change the cause. Mark it structural. Orders from council." Varon didn't look up. "Copy. Don't linger." Jonas's jaw locked. He started edging toward the catwalk leading higher. Elias caught his sleeve. "No," he breathed. "Not while they're here." Too late. Kesh's lamp swung back and froze on them. "There!" the lieutenant shouted. The aisle erupted with light. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to a throat of white glare and the taste of dust. Then Varen's rifle cracked. No warning, just impact. A shelving strut exploded, cards fluttering like startled birds. "Run!" Elias hissed. They bolted. Boots hammered metal, shelves shuddered. The first volley chewed through the row behind them. The second tore sparks from the catwalk above. Tracer fire carved brief suns through the cold. Jonas led, headlamps strobing frantic arcs. Elias followed close, breath tearing from his throat. The stacks twisted and uncoiled. Iron scaffolds, frozen catwalks, ladders dropping into black, torn-out panels gaping like wounds. A tracer screamed past Jonas's shoulder, shaving frost from the rail. He slipped, one boot skidding out. For a second, he hung in air. Elias caught his belt and hauled him up, both staggering. "This way!" Jonas gasped, pointing toward a narrow throat marked B9, a maintenance conduit barely wide enough for one man. They dove in. The passage swallowed sound, but not the concussion. Rounds slammed into the plating behind them, tinny and deafening. The air trembled with heat. Halfway through, a dead end loomed where the map had promised stairs. Jonas slammed his palms along the bolts until he found a manual hatch. It resisted like locked teeth. He drove the heel of his hand into the latch. The seal cracked. They tumbled into a service corridor narrower than their shoulders. The light from above a fading fever. Adrenaline howled in their veins. Elias's breath rasped but steadied. He checked the shard again, making sure it was still with him. Behind them came Boots, closer now, confident. A stun round hit a bulkhead and screamed. Varen's voice rolled through the metal. "Cut them off! Box them at the junction! Kesh, copy, Captain! Moving left!" The route to the upper lift was blocked by a collapsed scaffold, dropped deliberately in the sweep. Jonas didn't think. Plan. Move. He counted the rhythm of pursuit, timed the shouts. Another burst shattered the corridor where they'd been seconds before. Dust rained down like ash. They slipped into a maintenance closet stacked with dead comms gear. The smell of oil and ozone filled the cramped dark. Through the narrow vent slot, Jonas watched Varen's silhouette glide past, armor breathing quietly with its cooling fans, while Kesh followed, lamp jittering. "Sector clear?" Kesh's voice trembled faintly. "They doubled back?" Varen's reply came flat. "No, they're moving toward the lifts. Let them. We'll cut power." Their footsteps faded. Elias exhaled a quiet, humorless laugh. "They'll sweep again," he whispered, "and next time they won't stroll." Jonas turned the shard between his fingers. "We go now. We don't wait." They eased the door open and slipped out, moving low, hugging walls, their shadows stitched to the floor. Footprints pressed through old dust, a trail that could damn them or save them later. The corridor angled toward an emergency ladder. Jonas climbed 2 rungs at a time. On the landing above, a catwalk crossed a sealed inspection bay, an angle the patrol hadn't checked. He motioned, heart hammering, and Elias followed. They burst through the next hatch into a public service level, brighter, humming with conveyors and the pulse of power. For a moment, the normal noise felt obscene. Voices, tools, a distant bell. Ordinary life, blind to the hunt below. They stumbled into a shadowed alcove and collapsed against the bulkhead, lungs burning. Elias pressed a hand to his side and hissed. A bruise would bloom there later. "Can you walk?" Jonas asked. Elias managed a grin. "If I can't, you carry me." They stayed there, breathing hard, while the world above reset itself, bulkheads sealing, radios murmuring, as order stitched the station back together. Transition. The lift hummed upward through the spine of the station. Somewhere far below, alarms still echoed faintly, a memory of pursuit swallowed by distance. Here, the air grew cleaner, drier. Music bled faintly through the vents, the polite kind they played on the upper decks to remind people they were safe. Deck 3, Record Hall. The doors opened with a hiss of overpressure and a wash of bright light. Deck 3 was sterile, white panels, polished floors, the faint sting of disinfectant. The hum of recyclers filled the air like a heartbeat. Compared to the vaults below, it felt almost holy, and just as cold. They stepped out, trying to blend with the clerks moving between terminals. Uniforms gray with blue trim, each sleeve bore the sigil of the Administrative Bureau of Records, the place where information was cataloged, corrected, or quietly erased. Elias's limp was visible now. He disguised it as fatigue. "Keep your head down," he murmured. "If we look like we belong, we do." A checkpoint guard scanned their badges without interest. No alarm, no question, just the rhythm of bureaucracy humming along. Past the barrier, rows of hollow terminals glowed beneath glass partitions. Clerks murmured corrections into headsets. The air was too clean. Even the dust seemed disciplined. The record hall was a cathedral of order. Immense, silent, indifferent. They stopped beside a pillar-shadowed station. Elias keyed the mic. "Clerk identifier R37, he said, voice steady. "Requesting contact with Supervisor Laren. It's urgent." A pause, then a filtered voice crackled back. "Laren is in session. Identify reason." Elias leaned closer. "Recovered evidence from a restricted sector. Internal cause codes may be falsified. Static." Then, "Hold position." They waited. Jonas watched a transport drone glide across the ceiling, its shadow drifting like a moving cloud.
Interlude 2: The Waiting Man.
The chamber was built for silence. No screens, no banners, no unnecessary light. Only a table, a chair, and the tick of the chronometer on the far wall, each second sharp enough to cut. Cassian Drake sat motionless, hands folded before him. He had not looked at the chronometer in an hour, yet he felt every mark of it. Promises had weight, and weight carried its own sound. The codex was late. It was supposed to have arrived by now, carried from the archive by hands too nervous to fail. The arrangement had been made, precise and binding. Not hope, not chance. Agreement. And yet, nothing. The chamber door hissed. A guard entered, helmet tucked under one arm, boots clicking across the stone. He saluted once, crisp.
"No sign of the courier, sir. The archive reports disturbance in the atrium. Civil panic. Guards deployed. The extraction was not secured." Drake's eyes narrowed a fraction. The guard flushed, correcting himself fast. "I mean, the package was not secured." Drake let the silence stand long enough for sweat to bead on the man's temple. Finally, he said, "And the others?" "Operations are underway," the guard answered quickly. "Some overt, others less so. Relays degraded on schedule. Sweep teams dispatched. Cleanup proceeding." The words were careful, too careful. Drake leaned back in his chair. Shadows cut lines across his face, deepening the hollows of his eyes. "They all speak of schedules," he said softly, "but not of results." The guard shifted. "There will be results, sir." Something in Drake's composure flickered. His hand struck the edge of the table with a sharp crack, the sound shocking in the stillness. The guard flinched. Just as quickly, Drake smoothed his coat sleeve, as though the outburst had never existed. He rose. He was not a man who rushed, but when he moved, the air in the room seemed to move with him. He crossed to the narrow window slit and looked out. Beyond the glass stretched a city under curfew, lights dimmed, streets empty, towers black against the sky. Rain streaked the glass in silver threads. "Results," he repeated, calm again. "They promised me the codex. Not whispers, not delay." The guard swallowed. "Shall I?" "You will do nothing," Drake said. He turned from the window, coat settling against his frame like armor. "Others are already moving. If the codex has slipped, they will find it. If it cannot be found, it will be erased." The guard saluted again, relief too visible in the gesture, and backed toward the door. "Wait," Drake said. The man froze. Drake studied him a moment longer, then spoke almost idly. "Tell me, what do they call me, in the halls you walk through when you think I cannot hear?" The guard's throat woke. "Sir, they call you Commander." A faint smile touched Drake's mouth, thin as a knife's edge. "Commander, yes. But command is only the surface. Beneath it runs something deeper. The codex touches that current." He let the words hang, unfinished, their weight worse than clarity. Then he waved the man out. The door hissed shut. Alone again, Drake returned to the table. On it lay a small leather-bound book, older than the chamber itself. The cover was worn smooth,
The crest stamped upon it faded to a blur. His fingers rested on it lightly, tracing the shape as if memory itself might be coaxed from the leather. A crown once, perhaps, or a sigil no one living now would recognize. He did not open it. Not yet. The codex was promised, he said into the quiet. His voice was almost gentle. And promises to me are not debts. They are destiny. He closed the book with a snap and let the sound echo off the stone. Outside, the rain thickened. Inside, the chronometer ticked on, each second louder than the last.